May I share something with you? Something that weighs on me every day, with every breath I take. It's such a simple thing. A brief exchange that lasted seconds. Words that floated through cellular towers and landed on my screen with a soft chime I barely noticed. But those few words have become the heaviest burden I've ever carried. My name is Thomas. I'm 31, and this story begins on an ordinary Tuesday in April, with spring rain tapping against my office window and the constant hum of fluorescent lights overhead. I was buried in spreadsheets that day, preparing for a presentation that could determine whether I'd make partner at my consulting firm. The promotion I'd been chasing for 3 years was finally within reach, just a flawless presentation and a confident handshake away. My desk was littered with empty coffee cups, forgotten protein bar wrappers, and post-it notes covered in my increasingly frantic handwriting. The office had mostly emptied out. It was nearly 9 p.m., but I barely registered the time. The white walls of my cubicle had become the boundaries of my universe, the deadline my only reality. I'd been there since 6 a.m., running on caffeine and ambition, my eyes burning from staring at screens. My phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. I glanced at it with irritation, ready to silence whoever was interrupting my concentration. The screen lit up with her name, Emma. 3 text messages. Hey, you awake? I love you. I'm sorry for insisting so much. Please forgive me. I remember sighing, pinching the bridge of my nose where a headache was forming. Emma and I had been arguing for weeks. About my hours, about the time we spent together, about the future that kept getting postponed for just one more project, just one more deadline, just one more chance at advancement. Just the night before, she'd called me at the office, her voice tight with frustration. It's our anniversary, Thomas, she'd said. I made reservations weeks ago. I told you about this. Had she? Probably. But it had been filed away in some corner of my mind, labeled deal with later, buried beneath client requests and projection figures. I can't tonight, I'd told her. This presentation is tomorrow, and I'm nowhere near ready. Rain check. We'll do something special this weekend, I promise. The silence on the other end had spoken volumes. Emma, I'd prompted. It's always something, she'd said finally, her voice unnervingly calm. Always a reason why now isn't good, why later will be better. But later never comes, Thomas. That's not fair, I'd protested. You know how important this is. This promotion changes everything for us. Better salary, better hours eventually, better future. What about our present? She'd asked, so softly I almost didn't hear her. What about now? I have to go, I'd said, already distracted by an email that had just popped up. We'll talk about this later. That was the last real conversation we had. And now, these 3 text messages glowing on my screen. I swiped away the notification, telling myself I'd respond when I finished the section I was working on. 5 more minutes, 10 at most. But 5 minutes turned into an hour. An hour turned into 2. Somewhere around 11 p.m., as I was finally shutting down my computer, I remembered her texts. My fingers hovered over the screen, fatigue making it hard to think of how to respond. I'm busy, I finally typed. Talk later. Simple, direct, dismissive. I didn't think about how those words might land. Didn't consider what I love you, please forgive me, might really mean coming from someone who rarely apologized first, who was always willing to fight for what mattered. I drove home in the rain, windshield wipers creating a hypnotic rhythm that nearly lulled me to sleep at red lights. The digital clock on my dashboard read 11:47 p.m. when I pulled into the driveway of our small suburban house. The windows were dark. No porch light left on. Emma must have gone to bed already, which was a relief. I wasn't up for another argument. I unlocked the door quietly, leaving my wet shoes by the mat. The house felt different, somehow too still, too quiet. Even the air seemed changed, as if holding its breath. Emma, I called softly, in case she was still awake. No answer. I moved through the darkened living room, noticing absently that her favorite throw blanket wasn't draped over the couch where it usually lived. The kitchen was spotless, no dishes in the sink, no evidence of dinner made or eaten. Our bedroom door was closed. I turned the knob slowly, not wanting to wake her if she was sleeping. The bed was empty, still made with hospital corners, the way Emma always insisted upon. Her nightstand was cleared of the usual Clitino water glass. No lip balm, no dog-eared novel in progress. A cold feeling began to spread through my chest. I called her name again, louder this time. The sound echoed through the quiet house. My eyes fell on her dresser. The framed photo of us from our trip to Maine was missing. I yanked open the top drawer. Empty. The second empty. The third, the same. Panic rising, I stumbled to the closet and slid the door open with enough force to make it bounce against the wall. Her side was bare. No dresses hung in neat rows. No shoes lined up beneath them. Even her suitcase was gone from the top shelf. The bathroom told the same story. Her toothbrush missing. Her expensive face creams and makeup vanished. Only the ghost of her perfume lingering in the air. She was gone. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking as I pulled up her contact and pressed call. It rang once before going straight to voicemail. Her voice, recorded and distant. "This is Emma. Leave a message and I'll call you back." But she didn't call back. Not that night, as I paced our half-empty house, leaving increasingly desperate messages. Not the next morning, as I sat shell-shocked in the conference room, somehow going through the motions of my presentation while my personal life collapsed. Not in the days that followed, as I finally began to understand the magnitude of what I'd lost. 3 weeks later, her sister called me. I answered on the first ring, hope surging wildly. "Is she with you? Is she okay?" I asked without preamble. The silence that followed told me everything before she even spoke. "Thomas," she said, her voice breaking on my name. "Emma's gone." "I know she left," I said impatiently. "But where did she go? I need to talk to her, to fix this." "No, Thomas," she said, each word careful and heavy with grief. "Emma is gone. She took her life that night. After she texted you." The world stopped turning. I remember sinking to the floor, the phone still pressed to my ear, as her sister's voice continued from very far away. Words like depression, and struggled for years, and didn't want to burden you washing over me in waves. I couldn't process. All I could think about were those 3 simple text messages, glowing in the dark of my office. "Hey, you awake? I love you. I'm sorry for insisting so much. Please forgive me." And my response, "I'm busy. Talk later." But later never came. Later was buried with her. And "I'm busy" became the epitaph for everything we might have been. 8 months have passed since that rain-soaked April night. 8 months of waking each morning with the momentary belief that it was all a nightmare, followed by the crushing realization that this empty existence is my reality now. The promotion came through. My office is bigger, my salary higher, my business cards carry the word partner beneath my name. None of it matters. I work longer hours than ever, not from ambition now, but from fear of the silence that waits for me at home. Emma's texts remain in my phone. I can't bring myself to delete them, these last digital traces of her existence. Sometimes in the darkness of 3 a.m., when sleep eludes me as it often does, I open our message thread and stare at the exchange that has defined my life since. Her, "Hey, you awake?" Her, "I love you. I'm sorry for insisting so much." Her, "Please forgive me. I'm busy. Talk later." For messages. For simple messages that reveal everything about who we were in those final moments. Her reaching out with love, even in her darkest hour. Me, too preoccupied to recognize the desperation in her words. I've learned things about Emma in death that I never knew in life. Her sister shared journals Emma had kept for years, documenting her struggle with depression that she'd hidden behind smiles and productivity. She'd been seeing a therapist for months without telling me, trying to find her way through the darkness alone because she didn't want to add to my stress. The cruelest irony, while I was working endless hours to build what I thought would be our perfect future, she was fighting simply to stay present in our imperfect now. The signs were there, subtle but persistent. Her increasing insistence on quality time. The way she'd watch me when she thought I wasn't looking. A sadness in her eyes I mistook for ordinary disappointment. How she'd begun giving away cherished possessions to friends with casual comments like, "This would look better on you anyway." Her therapist reached out to me after the funeral. "Confidentiality ends with death," she explained. And she thought I should know that Emma had spoken often about feeling invisible in her own life. She said living with you was like living with a ghost who was always physically present, but mentally elsewhere. The therapist told me, her voice gentle, but the words still landing like blows. Our anniversary dinner, the one I'd counseled for my presentation, was meant to be more than a celebration. Emma had planned to talk about her struggles that night, to finally share the weight she'd been carrying alone. She'd rehearsed it in therapy, prepared herself to be vulnerable, to ask for the support she needed. Instead, she'd been met with another rejection, another rain check, another promise of later that never materialized. I wonder constantly what would have happened if I'd noticed the unusual tone of her texts that night, if I'd replied immediately, if I'd called instead of typing those dismissive words, if I'd gone home earlier. The what-ifs are endless and excruciating. The house remains half empty. I haven't touched her side of the closet, though her sister offered to help clear it out months ago. The few belongings Emma didn't take that night hold winter coats, books she'd already read, houseplants that have somehow survived my negligent care, have become sacred objects, monuments to the life we shared and the future we lost. Her favorite coffee mug still sits in the cabinet. I can't use it, but I can't put it away either. Sometimes I hold it, running my fingers over the chip on the handle from when she dropped it in the sink 3 years ago. I remember how she'd laughed at her own clumsiness, declaring it a mug with character now. Everything Emma touched had character, including me. I was better, fuller, more human when she was alive. Now I move through the world like an automation, going through the motions of a life I no longer feel connected to. The guilt is a living thing, coiled around my chest, constricting with every breath. Not just guilt for missing her final cry for help, but for all the moments before the dinners cut short, the weekend trips canceled, the conversations half heard while my mind was on work, the countless ways I communicated that something else was always more important than being present with her. 3 months after we lost her, I started seeing a therapist of my own. Not for grief counseling, though that's what my concerned colleagues assumed, but to understand how I could have been so blind to the suffering of the person I claimed to love most. You can't change the past, my therapist tells me in our weekly sessions, but you can learn from it. You can choose to live differently moving forward. Living differently. The concept feels both necessary and impossible. Who am I if not the ambitious workaholic who sacrificed everything for professional success? What identity exists for me beyond the one I cultivated so carefully, the one that cost me everything that actually mattered? I'm learning, slowly and painfully, to be present, to notice the changing quality of light through my office window, to taste food rather than simply consuming it for fuel, to really listen when someone speaks to me, without part of my mind already formulating my response or drifting to the next task. Small exercises in mindfulness that Emma would have appreciated, that she tried to teach me when she was alive, though I was too busy to learn. Last week I drove to the coast, where we'd spent our honeymoon 5 years ago. The small inn with its wraparound porch and view of the Atlantic was exactly as we'd left it. I booked the same room, though staying there alone felt like another kind of punishment. On our last morning there, as newlyweds, we'd watched the sunrise from Adirondack chairs on the beach, wrapped in blankets against the early chill, her head on my shoulder. "Remember this moment," she'd said, her voice soft with contentment. "When work gets crazy and life gets complicated, remember sitting here with nothing to do but watch the sun come up." I'd kissed the top of her head and promised I would, but I didn't. I let that perfect sunrise get buried under meetings and deadlines and the constant, insatiable drive for more and more success, more money, more recognition, all while the one thing truly worth having slipped through my fingers. Sitting in that same chair alone, watching the same sun emerge from the same horizon, I finally allowed myself to weep for all we'd lost, not just Emma's life, but the countless small moments we could have shared if I'd understood sooner what really mattered. That evening, I took out a notebook and began to write her a letter I know she never read. "My dearest Emma, the sun rose over the Atlantic this morning, just as it did 5 years ago when we sat together on this beach. You told me to remember that moment. I didn't then, but I do now. I remember everything now, with a clarity that breaks my heart daily. There are so many things I wish I could tell you, that I understand now what you meant about the present being more important than some hypothetical future, that I see how my constant deferrals of joy and connection were really just fear dressed up as ambition, that I would trade everything, the promotion, the recognition, all of it for one more ordinary Tuesday evening with you. But most of all, I wish I could respond differently to your last messages. Instead of 'I'm busy, talk later,' I wish I had written, 'I'm here, I love you. Nothing is more important than you.' Because nothing was more important than you. I just didn't realize it until it was too late. Your absence has taught me what your presence should have, that life isn't measured in achievements or acquisitions, but in moments of genuine connection. that being fully present for 1 minute is worth more than being partially present for a lifetime. I don't know if you can forgive me. I'm still learning how to forgive myself. But I promise you this. I won't waste the lessons your life and death have taught me. I won't continue to sleepwalk through my days, missing the beauty and pain and complexity that make a life worth living. This morning a young couple sat in these same chairs to watch the sunrise. They took pictures, then put their phones away and simply leaned against each other in silence. I wanted to go to them, to tell them to treasure every second, to understand how rare and precious their ordinary moment together truly was. I didn't interrupt them, but I'm trying to live in a way that would honor what you tried so hard to teach me, that later isn't guaranteed, that now is all we ever really have. You asked me if I was awake. I wasn't then, but I am now. You asked me to forgive you for insisting. There was nothing to forgive you. We're right to insist on being seen, on being prioritized, on being loved actively rather than theoretically. I'm the one who needs forgiveness, for every time I made you feel like an interruption rather than the center of my world. For every time I chose later over now. For not recognizing that your final messages were both goodbye and a last attempt to be truly seen. The world is dimmer without your light in it. I carry your absence like a shadow self, a constant reminder of what was lost through my own blindness. But I also carry your lessons, your love, your insistence on making moments matter. In that way, if in no other, I keep my promise to talk later. This is later, Emma. I'm finally ready to talk. I'm finally ready to listen. With a love that continues beyond all endings. Thomas, I folded the letter and walked to the shoreline as darkness fell. The tide was coming in, waves erasing footprints as quickly as they were made. I stood there for a long time, letter in hand, considering the endless cycle of loss and continuation that defines all human experience. Finally, as the first stars appeared overhead, I tore the letter into tiny pieces and released them into the wind and waves, not as a gesture of letting go, but as a way of returning my words to the elements that connect all things. Perhaps somewhere, somehow, she would feel them, if not read them. Walking back to the inn, I passed the young couple from that morning, now huddled together on the porch swing. They were talking quietly, completely absorbed in each other, the girl laughing at something her partner said. "Excuse me," I said, surprising myself by stopping. "I don't mean to intrude, but don't forget to save tonight in your memory, just as it is. It might seem ordinary now, but one day you'll understand how extraordinary ordinary can be." They looked startled. Then the young man nodded slowly. "Thanks, man. We will." As I continued to my empty room, my phone buzzed with a text from a colleague about a meeting tomorrow. For the first time in my professional life, I turned the phone off without replying. It could wait until morning. Work would always be there. Tonight was for remembering what Emma tried to teach me with her life. And her death, that I'm busy should never be an answer to "I love you." And that all the tomorrows in the world can't make up for the moment we missed today.